our religion says those who want to be religious, they've got the free will to be religious. Those who don't want to be religious, it's up to them. They can choose the way that they choose. Someone turned around and said, but this Rima Faqih, she doesn't wear hijab, that means she's not good. Does that mean that every girl who doesn't wear hijab isn't good in Islam? We reply by saying, no, not at all. If a woman doesn't wear hijab in Islam, it doesn't mean that woman is a bad human being. No. The problem sometimes has to be examined in a different way. What do I mean? I mean that in our communities today, we have become narrow-minded. The moment we see someone of our woman who doesn't wear the hijab, we turn around and say, look how bad a person they are. No, 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 you're using the wrong terminology. When you look at a person who's not wearing hijab, let's say Rima now, we accepted, she used her free will. Someone came and said she doesn't wear hijab, she's a bad person. No, that's not the right conclusion. When someone doesn't wear hijab, there could be a number of reasons. The first reason a woman may not wear hijab in Islam, maybe because of people like me and people like me in my job. What do I mean? I mean, sometimes it's not the woman that's bad, it's the preacher who's explaining in the wrong way. Because sometimes you've got people who sit on the minbar, all the women who don't wear hijab are going to hell. So who are you going to change talking like that to people? As in, when you talk like that, where are we? Are we sitting down in a place where you want to burn the human or you want to give mercy to the human? When you talk from the minbar of Al Muhammad and you sit down and you say, on the day of judgment your hair will be burning, and there'll be molten lead coming through your hair, and I don't know, God knows coming out of where. When you speak like that, that woman in the 21st century is going to turn around to you and say, look, I don't mean to be rude to you, but could you explain it in a different way? As in, I as a human being don't like to be told that I will be hanging from my hair and I'll be burning in the bottom of hell. Someone says, but Sayyid Ammar, this is written in our ahadith. Of course, if it's written in our ahadith, then without a doubt we respect what's in the ahadith. But I'm not talking about what's in the hadith. I'm talking about the way you approach the issue. You want to sit down like an evangelical preacher who wants to send the world to hell, nobody's going to come towards the religion. When you find the first reason why we have some people who don't wear hijab, who may end up one day adopting the Miss USA contest like this girl did, it could be because of years of majalis where she heard preachers, instead of talking about what's the positive way of wearing the hijab, all they ever did was concentrate on the negative. Do you know how many we lost in the generation aged 30 to 40? Do you know in my travels around the world how many in the generation aged 30 to 40 do not come to the mosques anymore? And do you know why they didn't come to the mosques anymore? Because for years they weren't listening to a minbar of mercy. They were listening to a minbar which just wanted to destroy the people who were listening. 30 to 40-year-olds who were put off religion because of the minbar. Instead of the minbar being a minbar of mercy, it became a minbar where the speaker would look down at his crowd, not be alongside his crowd. You find the first reason someone comes out like this is because of the method we are using. The method we are using sometimes may be wrong. Then number two, there may be a second reason why someone comes out like this when they don't wear hijab. Because we are focusing on the piece of the jigsaw, but once again we're not explaining the puzzle as a whole. Dr. Ali Shari'ati, the famous Iranian thinker, used to say, when they asked him, why is it that there are women out there who don't wear hijab? Do you know what he replied? He said, it's not because they haven't heard a lecture on hijab. They've heard thousands. It's because they don't trust the religion as a whole makes any sense to them. If you were first to explain the structure of the religion and the fact that it's a holistic way of life, then after that you would see that the jigsaw piece that's hijab would be adopted straight away. What are we doing? We're focusing on the jigsaw piece, but we've forgotten the puzzle. When I see someone who doesn't wear hijab, it's not for me to come and tell them, you should wear hijab, you're wrong not to wear hijab. No, I would first come and say that holistically, do you think Islam is a way of life? They'd reply, yes, holistically I believe it's a way of life. Theologically, I believe in the God of Islam. Ethically, I believe in the akhlaq of the Prophet of Islam. But jurisprudentially, I have a doubt about whether hijab is wajib or not. When I come to that person, theologically, when they don't wear hijab, does that mean that they don't believe in the God that I believe in? No, they do. Akhlaq-wise, does that mean they don't have akhlaq? Wallah, in some cases, some of them do. But the area of law, maybe they differ with me. They may say to me, I don't believe the Quran has a verse where hijab has to be worn. At that moment, I sit them down. I say, what do you mean? They say in the Quran, it says you cover your bosom area. But there's no verse which says cover your hair. I say, do you know how to study the Quran? Because when you study the Quran, you need to have knowledge of pre-Islamic Arabian culture. The Quran, why did it say draw your veil over your bosom? Because the Quran was speaking to a group of people who in Arabian society used to already wear veils, but their neck was showing and their bosom area was showing. The Quran was addressing them by saying, now draw your veil over your bosom, meaning you are already wearing a hijab on your hair. But if you don't cover your neck and you don't cover the chest area, then the hijab is not complete. Notice the approach. That girl who doesn't wear hijab, I don't come to and say, you're a bad person. Why? Theologically, her Allah is my Allah. Ethically, her akhlaq is my akhlaq from the Prophet and his family. But jurisprudentially, I come to her with a different understanding. Then there's a third reason why someone like Rima may not have come towards hijab. Do you know what it is? The third reason is we haven't understood the philosophy of hijab. You know Rima Faqih, when she wore the swimsuit? When she wore the swimsuit in the Miss USA contest, do you know what she was missing? She was missing an understanding of the philosophy of hijab. Oprah Winfrey is in town, isn't she? Yes? And Oprah will be in the Oprah house. Oprah Winfrey had a famous interview with a lady by the name of Krista Bremer. Krista Bremer has a famous article called Bikini or Headscarf, which offers more freedom. Oprah Winfrey sat down with Krista Bremer. Please listen to this point. Oprah said to her, Krista, what is it about the headscarf that made you praise it more than you praise the bikini? Listen to her reply. Krista Bremer, and Google her and you'll see the whole article. Krista Bremer tells Oprah Winfrey, she says, Oprah, the scarf of Islam affects the person in their childhood and in their adulthood in a positive way. Why? She said, I was married to an Arab Muslim. She's married to an Arab Muslim. She says, when I'm married to him, my husband is of Islamic values. I love the religion, but we had a difference. I didn't want my daughter to wear hijab at the age of 9. And he wanted my daughter to wear at the age of 9. She said, but when my daughter wore the hijab, I realized my husband was right and I was wrong. Do you know why? Listen to why. She said, as a human, we have 3 skins. If you peel one skin off, there's a second. And if you peel a second, there's a third. Go and study biology, you'll see that we have 3 skins as human beings. She said, Islam's the only religion which tells you that you as a woman have 3 skins as well. Please understand what she says. She says, do you know my daughter, when she went to school, I was fearing the day she'd have to go swimming. Because my daughter is going from childhood to adolescence. It's pressure in the media today about the body of a woman. When she goes swimming at that young age, I'm thinking, how much pressures does she have that I had, that my body was changing and I have to wear this swimsuit at this age? And I've got all these young boys who are around me who may not be affected, but I'm affected by the changes in the other girls around me. Am I changing too early? Are they changing too early? Am I wearing it in the right way? Are they wearing it in the right way? She said, Oprah, I looked at my daughter and I took her away from the swimming lessons And I felt my daughter was developing in adolescence in the way she should be, not through pressure, but through freedom. She said, because my daughter was not meant to take that much pressure at a young age in seeing her body changes. She said, Oprah, do you see anorexia? Do you see bulimia? Do you see how many girls are under pressure because of their bodies? She said, when I looked at Islam saying, let the girl be comfortable, don't expose her to the skimpy dresses you expose her at that young age. She said, I recognize Islam and appreciate this. But she said, more than this, Oprah, you know when I dropped my daughter to school? She said, yes. She said, when I dropped her, I just stopped in the car and I saw her walking in with her hijab. But a hijab, not where she's wearing tight hijab, because it defies the point. The pressure remains. Is the jeans in the right shape? Is the jumper figure hugging? The pressure is still there. When she wore a hijab that was a bit looser, she could walk into that school comfortable. The girls in her age are wondering about their body shape, whereas my daughter is wondering about her character. My daughter is developing into a woman while the girls in her age group are simply dying as young women. And then she said, the Prophet explained 3 skins. A woman's first skin is her physical hijab, and then the social hijab, then the hijab of being a visionary. She said that the Prophet said there's 3 hijabs, but Islam is focusing too much on one. That she said the same way we have 3 skins as humans, the Prophet of Islam said that there's 3 skins to the hijab. You wear your physical hijab, you need a social hijab. You have a social hijab, you need a hijab of a visionary. What's a visionary? A visionary is what we are lacking and why Rima comes out the way she comes out. Do you know what a visionary is? A female who emerges as a powerful speaker in Western society. When you come to the reform of the female in Western society, the first reform that we need in order that we don't have another case of a Rima faqih is that we need more female women speakers in our communities. What do I mean by that? I mean that however many male speakers you bring to Australia, every Muharram there are still certain issues which the male speaker cannot talk about, which the female can. But you can't have a female speaker who's generations and generations ahead of the younger woman. You need a young woman speaking to young woman. Someone who identifies with them, someone who speaks for them, someone who knows the life they are living. We find, unfortunately, every time a young woman speaker rises in our communities, you've always got the group who are ready to open their mouths. They are the group who are like, who's she to tell me about how I should be religious? Do you know how she was when she was younger? So you never heard the story of Hur bin Yazid al-Riyahi? You never heard the story of how Hur changed? Can't you change as well? Why is it that in our Western circles, whenever a woman speaker who's young wants to emerge, we always put her down? We never allow her development. In the same way, I can sit on the minbar of Ahlul Bayt as someone. For the males of the community, there has to be even more than me in terms of the females coming to speak. That's number 1. Number 2, there has to be a reform of the majalis, of the gatherings of the elder woman in our community. What do I mean? I mean, do you know it's reached a stage where in the lectures of the elder woman in our community, it's reached a stage where the women go there to cry, not to learn. What do you go there for? You listen to the lecturer, she makes you cry. Give me a topic. Examine history, examine ethics, examine theology, examine jurisprudence. No! 45 minutes on Karbala al-Hussein. I love Imam al-Hussein. I promise I love Imam al-Hussein. But give me some substance. The elder woman in the school of Ahlul Bayt in their majalis in the Arabic language, in the Indo-Pak language, in the Persian language, are just tales of emotional history. Is there substance? No, there's no substance. And what's it become? Why are you going to the majlis? I'm going to see my friends. You're not going to learn? No. Everyone's going there. She's going, he's going, she's going. I have to be there. That ladies' majlis, which was founded on Fatima al-Zahra, which was founded on Sayyida Zainab, which was founded on knowledge, which changed your life, has just become a mere social gathering for people to come and sit down and discuss their affairs. Whereas there needs to be a reform in this area, where women's majalis, which are held in the traditional languages, address the current issues. Number 3, the women of the community have to have as much say in the mosques as the men of the community. What do I mean? I mean, why is it that the women in the community in many of the mosques are put in the worst area of the mosque, whereas the men are sitting right in front of the speaker in their comfort zone? The women are put downstairs, the men upstairs. The women are put in the worst places, whereas the men are put in the best. The men make all the decisions for the mosques, the women make none. In the same way the men can see the youth, the women can see the youth. There should be open voting where men and women can lead communities. Because the religion of Islam did not come as a patriarchal religion. It came to ensure that every member of the community had a say. That's why when you come to someone like Rima Faqih, if you were ever to sit with her, say to her, Rima, did you ever hear of the great woman who came before you, who you could have taken as a role model in your life? Woman who served this religion. Someone will say to me, but Sayyid Ammar, these women you're going to mention, they lived 1,000 years ago. Rima's not going to relate to any of them. No. If I can make their lessons contemporary, then Rima and all of us in this hall can relate to them. What do I mean? I have a sister, or I have a daughter, or I have a niece who comes to me and says to me, I want to be religious, but I'm too attached to the dunya and I can't leave it. I can't even see why I should be attached to the akhirah. I say to her, did you ever hear of a lady in history called Asiya, the wife of Fir'aun? Asiya's husband would not allow her to walk on the ground. He would make people carry her because he loved her that much. He even did not kill the baby Musa out of his love for Asiya. The palaces of the world were hers. I tell you, sisters, you will not find any of us in this whole hall today who will own as much of an empire as Asiya owned. She could have easily said, I'm attached to the dunya, I can't get out and think of the akhirah. But Asiya showed us very clearly that even if you're in the middle of the richest environment, sometimes this world is too short for us not to reflect about it. When she saw Musa defeat the magicians, she came forward and she said, I now believe in the Lord of Musa and Harun. Fir'aun came forward and he said to her, you're telling me that you're going to leave me as God and you're going to go towards the Lord of Musa? She said, yes. He said, Asiya, I gave you this whole world. She said, the Lord of Musa gives me the hereafter and the world. He said to her, but what's the difference between me and him? I am a God and he is a God. She replied by saying, the Lord of Musa is always awake, whereas Fir'aun can sometimes go to sleep. She looked at him, she was attached to the dunya. No, she wasn't. When you say, I can't leave the love of this world, I'm too attached to it, take her as a role model. She could have been attached to this world, yet at the end, what did she say? Oh Allah, build for me a house with you in Jannah. You could take her as an example. Someone comes and says, Sayyid Ammar, I want to be involved in the political affairs of my country, Australia. I want to get involved in politics. I want to change the future of the political environment. Who can I take as a role model? I say, take Fatima al-Zahra alayhi salam as your role model. Fatima al-Zahra did not just stay at home and say, I as a woman am only going to bring up Hassan and Hussein and Zainab and Kulthum and nothing else. Fatima al-Zahra knew that unless the woman gets involved in the political world, then we'll have cases of injustice which may happen, cases of oppression which may happen. You as a woman can represent your community. Do not let any man come and tell you that politically you have no place. Politically, that Fatima stood up and spoke to the whole of Medina about those who usurped the leadership of Amir al-Mu'mineen. And she stood up and spoke about those who took the land of Fadak from her. Fatima could have turned around and said, no, it's haram. It's not part of hijab to enter politics. On the contrary, you enter to serve Islam, you enter to remove oppression, you enter and you're not compromising your values, then there's no problem whatsoever. Fatima al-Zahra's khutbah at Fadak is a khutbah every single one of you should have read by your age. If you haven't read it, then don't cry for Fatima. There's no point. Your tears have to be matched with research, with knowledge, with implementation. Read that khutbah of Fatima, your grandmother, the lady who held your religion. Read that khutbah where she shook the whole of Medina on the political scene. Someone comes forward and says that I look at the oppression happening in the world. I want to start a group on the internet or in my community speaking out against oppression. Look at Sumayya, the mother of Ammar ibn Yasir. Sumayya, sitting down, originally hadn't been a Muslim. She saw her son Ammar become a Muslim. She heard the verse, وَإِذَا الْمَوْءُودَةُ سُئِلَتْ بِأَيِّ ذَنْبٍ قُتِلَتْ. She heard Rasulullah say, why is the female buried alive? She began to cry because her two elder sisters were buried alive as females. This Sumayya, when she joined the religion, she saw Abu Jahl oppressing Rasulullah. She spoke out against Abu Jahl. She formed a group of women who were Sahaba of Rasulullah. She formed them to speak out against Abu Jahl and Abu Sufyan and Walid ibn al-Mughira. This Sumayya, Abu Jahl was standing on top of her with a spear. He said to her, leave the religion of Muhammad and I will let you go. She said, I'll never leave the religion of Rasulullah. He used the spear to rip the middle of her body into pieces. Isn't Sumayya alive today? Don't we have Sumayyas? Don't we have Sumayyas who are forming groups to speak out against injustice? Then there's a fourth group of women who come. They say, Sayyid Ammar, I want to be religious, but my family isn't religious. I say to them, did you not hear the story of Jamila, the daughter of Abu Amr, who was married to Hanzala, the son of Abdullah ibn Ubay? Jamila, her father was a Christian monk. She converted to the religion of Islam knowing her father was an enemy of Rasulullah. She didn't let her father's religion affect her religion. She didn't say, my dad isn't religious, therefore I can't be religious. She said, I'm going to join the religion of Rasulullah. If it means my parents are going to attack me, they're going to abuse me, they're going to hurt me, I have a Lord who will look after me on a day my parents can't. She married Hanzala, the son of Abdullah ibn Ubay, who was the chief of the hypocrites of Medina. A day before the battle of Uhud, they got married. The day after, Rasulullah announced that the Sahaba have to go and fight at the battle of Uhud. She said to her husband, go and defend Rasulullah, but stay with me for one night. When they stayed together for that one night, she had witnesses who came to see that they got married. After Rasulullah returned from Uhud, he came to her. He said to her, Jamila, I have bad news. She said, what is it? He said, your husband died as a shaheed in the battle of Uhud. She said to him, Ya Rasulullah, as long as he died in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He said, yes, he did. She said, how do you know, Ya Rasulullah? He said, I saw the angels come and provide him with his ghusl when he was alone on the ground. That Jamila could have easily said what some are saying today, that I don't have a role model whose parents weren't religious, and they were. Jamila is a role model for you. Her parents weren't religious, but she was. Then there are some who come forward and say, give me a role model who built a business and she got money, but the profit which she made, she gave towards Islam. I want to build a business like a philanthropy cause, and I want to give them the money to Islam. Some will say you could give the example of Khadija. No, Zainab, the wife of Rasulullah, built a non-profit business where she would make handicrafts. She would sell them in Medina. Whatever money she would get, she'd give to the Sahaba who were living in Medina. Isn't she a role model? Then there are other women who come and say, Sayyid Ammar, I want to be religious, but I want to be modern. Can I be both? Yes, you can. Why aren't you allowed to drive fast cars? Yes, you can. Drive the fastest car. Why can't you wear Prada and Gucci and Vuitton? Wear all of them. There isn't a problem. Why can't you live in the best of houses? Live in the best of houses. In Nahj al-Balagha, someone comes to Imam Ali and he says to him, my brother isn't religious because he's got this mansion now. Imam, tell him that you can't have a mansion because it means you will not be religious. Imam said, if in that mansion Allah is remembered and the Quran is read and Salat al-Rahim is enjoined, then that mansion is a wasila to getting closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Those who come and say, I want a role model who's modern but religious. In the Quran, the Queen of Sheba was the richest woman alive. Only Nabi Sulaiman could match her. She was modern without a doubt. Her throne was modern. Her clothes were modern. The way she lived was modern. When she entered the palace of Sulaiman, she began to walk on the water, but before she walked, she thought it's water, so she lifted her dress. It turned out to be the finest glass you will ever see. She said, if that is what the palace of Sulaiman is like, then how about the Lord of Sulaiman? What palaces does he have? She left everything to marry Nabi Sulaiman and join Islam. She remained modern but religious. Someone like Rima was taught for years, you can't be modern and religious. She was taught the religious are always those who look backward. They don't look modern. They dress miserly. That's not Islam, that's culture. Islam said dress the best way you want to dress. Live the best way you want to live. But make sure there's a balance where you know there'll be a day you're accountable for the way you lived and the way you spent and the way you talked and the way you walked. Further than this, you notice all of these examples, someone will come and say, but they were 1,000 years ago. Give me modern examples. In the 20th century, we had women who were modern great examples. Go and study their lives. Study the life of someone like Zainab al-Ghazali in Egypt. Have any of you come across Zainab al-Ghazali? Zainab al-Ghazali was an Egyptian Muslim woman who was imprisoned by Jamal Abdel Nasser and later by Anwar al-Sadat. This Zainab al-Ghazali, 3,000 to 5,000 women would attend her lectures in Egypt. She would speak out against Jamal Abdel Nasser. She would speak out calling him Pharaoh because of the way he dealt with the people. They put her in prison. In her book she wrote how she was tortured in prison, but that she was inspired by a woman who helped Rasulullah in the battle of Uhud. In the battle of Uhud, there was a woman who helped Rasulullah when he was alone on the mountain. Imam Ali was with him, Abu Dujan al-Ansari was with him, and this woman was alongside him. Zainab al-Ghazali, she was inspired by this woman. Jamal Abdel Nasser put her in prison for years. She didn't stop. When she came out of prison, she kept on speaking out against the injustice that was happening in that society. Women were changing. She was empowering women. At the end, many women in Egypt come towards religion because of Zainab al-Ghazali. She's a modern example for you to use. Her three skins. She had the physical hijab, the social hijab, and the visionary hijab. How could I build a vision for Muslim women in Egypt? Ghazali was a visionary for Muslim women. Then you had a lady in Iraq by the name of Bint al-Huda. Original name Amina al-Sadr. The sister of Sayyid Muhammad Baqir al-Sadr. May Allah bless their souls. Do you know this? Do you know this Amina al-Sadr? The effect she had on women in Iraq and women around the Islamic world. In the 1960s and 70s, do you know how many Shia women in Iraq were miles away from religion, didn't have even the beliefs anymore, were affected by different streams of thinking? Bint al-Huda, as a visionary, do you know what she did? She didn't come to women and say to them, you are not religious, you should be religious, this is the way you should be. No, no, no. She began to write small books or booklets. These booklets, do you know what she would do? In the 60s and 70s in the Middle East, there were lots of novels of love stories going around, weren't there? So she would write booklets where there would be a type of love story. But the conversation between the man and his wife would be a conversation where religious concepts are introduced. For example, once she writes a story of a lady called Rihab and her sister Hasanat. These are two women in Iraq. Hasanat is religious, Rihab isn't religious, Hasanat is. And Hasanat has just been proposed to by someone who lives abroad. Bint al-Huda says that that person who's proposed to Hasanat would write letters to her. Rihab, out of her jealousy, would take the letters. And she wants to write to the person who's the fiancé to say that, you know what, I'm not interested in you anymore and I don't want to be with you. In other words, she was pretending she was her sister. And she was trying to reject him. And she was saying to him that there's no way you're religious. You live abroad, I live in Iraq, you can't be. Bint al-Huda would say, but then he would write back saying why he's religious. And why going abroad made him religious. Why it helped him become religious. She then would reply by saying, do you really believe in God? He'd reply by giving her the cosmological argument, the teleological argument, all the philosophical arguments about why God exists. She then says to him, do you really believe I should wear hijab? He'd send her the verses through letter of why hijab is good for her. She would then write, I want to ask for forgiveness that I've been rude. He would give her the ahadith of Ahlul Bayt about how you can be forgiven. Do you know how many women in Iraq changed? Do you know how many of these novels changed? Bint al-Huda didn't just give lectures and preached. She was a visionary. She used the third skin, the skin of how to build a community and build a nation, that after you die, people remember you 30 years later like I'm remembering her tonight.